Hello, my name is Benjamin Sculatti. I'm an assistant to the manager as well as the director here for the radiology department at PM Medical Center. And I was hoping to talk to everybody about evidence-based management. And that also involves evidence-based medicine as well. That's the practice of. And we'll get into that. And I was hoping to talk to those who do know about evidence-based management as well as those who don't know about it. It'll be a refresher for those who do know it. And then also I'll list off some things that even those who do know what it is, that some new things, some new classifications, new components to evidence-based management. So what is evidence-based management? So let's first start by looking at the evidence. Let's break down the word and go for what the first word in the term, evidence. So what is evidence? It means proof, confirmation, data, science, and also we'll get into something called the scientific method later on, and then knowledge. And we want to be informed. We want to be just like being an informed voter or conformed consent for patients. They need to know what's going on with their health, and the physician has to let them know what's going on through the process. It's good to be informed. We have to know the manager, any manager, whether in the radiology department or even ER or med surg, any department in a hospital or even a clinic needs to inform those in other departments on what's going on. And what we that does is help move away from guessing, from doubt, the unknown, and fear. And those are the normal ways people and managers and even higher ups, even some corporate, tend to make decisions out of impulses. We try to get away from that, and they learn to get away from that. But still, it does happen. It does happen because they're on time constraints, including the CEO. The CEO here at PM Medical Center, uh, and also all the COO, CCO, they're all time constraints, and their time is very important to them. So we need to make sure the our data is based upon evidence. Here we have illustrations of data, and that comes in the form of graphs and charts and many others. There's a lot of ways that illustrations can occur and how data can present itself visually is to visualize a set group of data, and it comes either two or more groups of data, and that's a bar graph right here, as you see, and that's to compare one or two variations and compare and contrast numbers. And this is for comparing and contrast. The pie chart, pie graph or chart is used to compare percentages, and it's a good way to look at 100% or a variation of that as a whole. And then here's a line graph or line chart. A line graph is used for temporal studies. And what I mean by temporal is time. Time is on the horizontal axis, and then the numbers or value or amount is on the vertical, and it's used for time. And there is also a combination of a graph, such as a, a line graph with a bar graph. Very, there's a lot of variations that a manager can use to illustrate their data and to show their data visually and to make it more comprehensive and understandable to people. So here, I like to uh, talk about evidence more on common sense. What makes it makes common sense to have evidence as part of explaining evidence-based management or evidence-based medicine in order to back up a claim or a purpose or a goal that someone is attempting to make. Common sense. And that's like we talked about data and also best practices, which is thorough, specific, candid. You want to be honest with the the data, not try to skew the data in any way and that can occur. There's statistical ways in order to curb the data, in order to make it look a particular way. And a good evidence-based management practice, as best practices, is to not do that, to be as honest as possible and show what is for real, uh, really what the data does show, instead of curbing it. And there should be a cross-examination between many sources. That is also in part of scientific method, and I'll get into that a little bit later. And you want to have many variations of sources, and that's in sample size as well. That's in that, and it makes the subject and uh, subject relevant to the audience so that they can connect with it, as well as illustrations, and it's common sense. So here I have a picture. I took a picture off of the internet of gasbuddy.com and looked at various gas prices here in a city called Clear Lake, California. And you see here, I would like to ask the audience, what gas prices would you rather have? Would you rather get? Would you get, there's $4.96, $4.67, and then $5.17. So obviously you want to go for the cheapest. And we'll talk about this a little bit more in various other slides, but you want to go with the cheapest because it makes sense to buy something that it costs less for the same thing. That makes sense. Common sense. That's the evidence. You see the evidence. What's applicable. So, and then economy is unreliable sometimes. There's variations in the economy, and managers with evidence-based management have to accommodate for these variations in economy. And data helps to both predict and uh, forecast that change in economy throughout years and decades. It helps to establish a set of reliable data that we can base our predictions on. And then that's the part of makes sense of unreliability. The economy can't be relied upon itself. It's just but we can forecast it with data. And then the best judgment. We got to use our common sense and best judgment. Those two go together. Three go together actually: data, best judgment, and common sense. So now here I want to get into the management side of evidence-based practice. And it involves quality management, that's quality assurance, quality control, and also quality improvement. Those three aspects make up quality management. And that's on the inside. There's internal and external ways, internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. This more has to do with internal processes that help to establish external stakeholders' opinions about a company. And that's what managers have to be aware of. And it involves service, product, and productivity. And we'll get into this a little bit later too, productivity of employees and everybody else in the company. And service and product, those two things, that's what either any type of company, whether it is a hospital or a for-profit company, such as Google or Amazon, for profit. They all have either a service or a product that they put out, and sometimes a mixture of both. And that, and also employees' work habits, which is part of productivity. So we have to establish all three of these in a way that that is a set principle for external stakeholders as well as internal stakeholders, where it pleases the external stakeholders, where they can come and see the quality of the service, the product, and the employees themselves too. And decision making, this is very important for both evidence and when it comes to management, with quality management, is decision making. It helps managers to make wise decisions, and so that they can be accountable to others with their decisions. And to maybe our radiology director will propose a decision for improvement within the radiology department to the CEO. They need to present good evidence for a decisive matter to make that applicable. So, and then structure, good structure in a company, and that's involved with each department. The managers, the physicians, the employees, they have to operate in a productive way. A good structure helps to make effective productivity. And then strategy to gauge an impact and output. It helps to forecast for the future, like what I said, but also it's input, process, and then output. So we want a good output and less money for that output. That is what helps out with that decision making to that CEO for the maybe any of our directors, department directors make that decision to the CEO or COO is that we want a good output with less amount of revenue spent of our revenue spent, and then anticipation the market behavior that involves economy. So here I would like to talk about some good practices, some best practices when it comes to management, the management side of evidence-based management. And that's one of them. These are very specific and good ideas and concepts that we can instill in evidence-based management. And it's lean thinking. That's to establish as to eliminate waste. With productivity, you establish productivity with as little waste as possible, and even cut out the waste as best you can to where there is no waste at all. And it was established by a Toyota manufacturing line, and this is the gentleman right here who established it. And I don't really know Ohanon. That's how you pronounce the name, but I'm not entirely sure. But he worked for Ford, a Ford company production line manager, helped establish this. And there was others too that helped him along, and the idea of lean management evolved, and it reduces unnecessary spending. Whereas, for example, in inventory, they try to not create such a wide inventory in a product where they have an overstock of a product, where they waste money. It's a waste of money and a waste of time with ordering that product. So they just order as needs be. That's for example with inventory. And then Six Sigma is an operational improvement, and that's a drastic and a revolutionary type of thinking process when it comes to and productivity process. And there's actually certified people who are involved with this Sigma Six, and that goes along with lean thinking. And there's also system thinking. So managers within evidence-based management have to think. They usually think their own department. Yes, they have to first get to know their own department and how the productivity and effectiveness and efficacy of their own department. But they also have to think of also how is their department going to affect another department. That's system think. How each department affects other departments in a whole systems think. It's a systems think. And that's part of the management side. So managers have to think a lot of their own department, and also how is that going to affect other departments, whether internal stakeholders or external stakeholders. And performance management, yes, we talked about that, and then in, impact on stakeholders, yes, economy, we talked about that, and it also provides a free market. Good evidence-based management helps to establish a free market enterprise where there's good competitiveness. You want a good competitive edge, and that's what evidence-based management helps to establish. And looking two companies side by side that are competitors look at one another and try to establish the same product or service for a cheaper price and better quality. That is what helps to establish a good competitive edge and free market enterprise. And it's sustainability too. Sustainability. We want to keep continuing on with the same amount of quality, and that's from thinking within. Managers and directors have a big role to play when it comes to this. Based on facts. This goes back to evidence-based. So I referred to it before as the scientific perspective, and it also gets into the scientific method as well, is to have your data and back it up too, and to we'll talk about that in a little bit, is reproducibility within the the research, and then deter from opinion-based decisions, of course, just like data and evidence. And we want to have peer-reviewed evidence and those who are experts in their field to to be credited in them as opposed to maybe a newspaper. So, and let's see, and productivity, more cost effective, and products cost less. We want our products to cost less. We want to buy, let's say, our OR supplies for less, but this is for the same quality. So we can outsource the same service or product and get it for the cheaper, so that it in the chain of events, it's also cheaper for our customer or for the customers of a company or for our patients. Since we're a hospital, it's cheaper for our patients. So we want to extend the art of gratitude to our patients by doing a good work from within. That's what managers and directors have to do in order to establish that. And this is pretty much the equations. It's a simple equation. It makes it all understandable right here. The value. Value equals product or service over cost. So in other words, if the product or the service costs more, then you get more value. It the product or the service, if it's better in quality, that's what I meant for product or service. If it's better in quality, it's better in value. But on the converse, contrary, it may cost more. That's why value, it's inverse to cost. Inverse value, when the cost goes up, the value goes down. That's what we don't want. They're inverse. We want good product, good quality product, but for less the price. This is what the evidence-based practice equation is, and this is how a lot of times we weigh out our decisions. So here's quality in healthcare. It addresses concerns, and it has a mindset for the stakeholder, and internal, but also external too, because in order to change the external stakeholder and get them to see our product or service as better in value and lesser in cost, we need to turn it from the inside out. It really starts within the company. It really starts within the company and the internal stakeholders. How are we going to internalize productivity the best way we can at a value-based systems and a best practice systems in order to get that external stakeholder to say, you know what, I'm looking at this and it looks like a really good value. I'm going to choose this company. We're going to choose Pima Medical Center over any another company, so, or another hospital, another place to go. So, and we look upon the external stakeholders as the impact. What is the impact we're going to have on our community? We want to have the best here at Pima Medical Center. We want to have the best impact we can and change lives for the better for the quality of healthcare as we can. And the outcome, that is on every project that we have. Like what I said before, with input, process, and then output. The outcome of every project is, and it should be, quality at less cost. And that is the decision, how evidence-based medicine and best practices in medicine work. That is how. And it also goes with quality management. Mm-hmm. And let's see. And it's also institute change where it's needed. And when there is no time where there is no improvement needed. There's always improvement. Quality management is always going to happen and always going to need, because the economy changes, communities changes, people move, and there's variations in demographics. So quality and quality management are always going to be a process, an improving process, because it's always changing within the population of our community that we serve here at Pima Medical Center. So quality in healthcare is a big part, and it's always constantly improving and changing. So we need to be abreast on that with data, evidence, and management, and good practices within our company and within our hospital. So like that equation that I talked about, the value equation, the product or service, the quality of that over the cost. What that does is move the value onto our patients. So that's good for our patients and makes it safer for our patients because we have, and I'll get into this a little bit later too, uh, legitimate practices, state and the feds will oversee how our quality is contributing to the community. And that's how safe our practices are, our services, how safe OR is, how many acquired infections that happen here at this hospital from the OR, how how often our patients or how often our employees glove themselves and how often hand washing is going on. That's all quality and quality management. And and we have to be on the par of efficacy and efficiency of legality on the state practices. And it should be well established in value and low in cost. So here are a couple items when it comes to scientific method. And that's one of the major things with the evidence-based practice, evidence-based medicine, or evidence-based management. All of those has to do with the scientific method, and it has to do with the data. What is the data like, and the research of that data? Is it repeatable, reliable, and can you test it? Can you test the the research that went into it? Can you draw on the credibility of the authors of a particular article? And that should be the credibility of that research is the what what licenses they hold, what credentials they hold, which is important too. It makes it credible, and also metrics. And what I mean by metrics is measurements. How can you measure the reliability of a source? And that's one of them is the author and things of that sort. And we have to get the data right. And that's through major databases. We can get them from the library. They have to be credible and reputable. And you have to use, this goes back using good judgment. That goes back to common sense and relevance to the people that any type of stakeholder, external stakeholder, internal stakeholder. You want to use what's called the FAIR test, and we'll get into that a little bit later. It's called the FAIR test, and that has to do with credibility, with research method or data used in research method. So here we have some more on scientific method, and it involves graphs, white papers, business messages, whether informative or persuasive. Now, usually I'd like to say all business messages are persuasive because they intend to guide someone into a particular mindset. Even informative papers are persuasive because they have data they have a purpose and data to support that purpose. So it is persuasive. So, but sometimes it's a little bit less persuasive than others. So that's why I divide these two up into different ones. And it should correlate with the purpose of particular ways, a particular mindset or a particular purpose. Maybe a director or a manager wants to improve, put a project together, and it should correlate to the purpose. So, and the fair, the I in fair stands for an impact. And what fair, it's an acronym. Fair, fact, and accessible, and impact, and respect. Those 4 items should go into a research method. It's got to have a good fact, and we talked about that before, good data, and to back up our statements. And then accessible, how accessible is the data, and also credibility. That involves accessibility. How can someone look up the facts that we're talking about? And then impact. What's the impact on people, whether external or internal stakeholders, the impact? And the impact is directly linked to outcome. what's the outcome and how it's going to impact either external or internal stakeholders. And then quality management, we already talked about that, improvement, assurance. So here we have how it connects to specialists. So those in a specific field, let me a radiologist or an ICU physician or a clinician or a hospitalist, any of those within the internal stakeholders. How are they going to be affected by evidence-based management? That's by data. And that's by understanding different professions. And this goes into systems things that, as we talked about before, managers need to understand how one department is going to affect another department, and how that data in a project is going to help improve the system's whole as a whole. And that's the impact, internal impact. And external impact is employment on the community. Does a certain particular project create jobs? Well, that will help out the impact of external stakeholders for some and for the community. And again, with evidence-based management, state and federal regulations are involved. There's the HIPAA regulation, Health Insurance Portability Accountability Act, 1996, and that is established good good transfer of data, and that involves quality management. That's part of quality management, but evidence-based management is a little bit different when it comes to that. I'm just using that as a reference to the legislation process, how legislation impacts external and internal stakeholders within our company, within our hospital, FEMA Medical Center, as well as how we can impact legislation as well. And that's good by continuing on with quality management, and quality assurance, and good quality control, federal laws, state laws, and here the AHRQ, Agency for Health Care Research and Quality, they have been established with us for quite a while and helping to establish a better quality management and quality of care for patients. That's very important too. And accessibility, that's the A in the FAIR, and helps the FAIR test, and helps with population demographics so that data can be readily available to external stockholders. And that's it for my presentation, and here is the reference page, and we can go through this if need be, but I got all my sources from reputable sources, whether that's educational sources, government organizations, websites, or peer-reviewed articles. So thank you very much. I hope you learned quite a bit on what evidence-based management in medicine and best practices involved.